All right, good morning and happy Friday, gentlemen. Bob here back again, breaking down some Bitcoin. Let's get right down to it. So let's go ahead and take a look here. Muddied up our chart a little bit here that I would normally keep pretty clean, just to kind of help myself, honestly, just a little bit. It's tough to look at one chart that's all mucked up all the time and try to assess anything off that, but then it's tough to look at this one and without anything on it and make it a comparative situation. So went ahead, dropped a reverse Fibonacci on here so we could kind of keep track of the move that went from here to there at this point. And I'll zoom in on some shorter term time frames here, but as of right now, this is what we're working with. Yeah, matter of fact, let's just zoom in on the pattern here. I think this will be more helpful to everybody here. All right, so as far as what we got going here, you can kind of see where we've got this kind of, I could call it a bear pennant. Could call it, it could be a rising channel if I put a cap right here and just put a line that came across. So we potentially got one of those few things going on. The big thing that I'm going to be looking for today here is this, that ideally we don't want Bitcoin to break back into this trend line here, break back into that, and it all but assures that this thing's going to come back down to here or outright fall out of the ascending part of the pattern, okay? So we need a good, solid, bullish retest here. The thing that I'm going to call it a concern in this case. Now, we kind of got almost a look. This almost looks like a little bit of an ascending triangle here. So this could be bullish still. And again, we'll zoom in a little closer on even shorter time frames. I think you'll see it as well. But, we are, this is a 4-hour chart. We are getting higher lows. So there is an ascension to that right there, right? The question is, can it break above this level right here? Because that's obviously, you can see here that's the level holding it down, 30,400-ish. It spiked above it a few times, but each time it's pulled back down. You'll see here that the bulls have been defending this 236 fib level. Super typical, right? Like that's what you want to see, but that doesn't, and it typically, lately, it hasn't been holding up that long at all, right? Like this one, if I move this fib level over, or this fib chart over to this section, you can see that we were already testing the 382 within 4 hours, basically. And then here, this one spiked all the way down to a 618-ish level. Now, this one has actually held the 236 for, at this point, basically, damn near 24 hours, right? 18 hours at least. So the question becomes, all right, we clearly we're not breaking out of this yet, right? Clearly that has not happened. So the question becomes, how far down does it retrace? Well, ideally, like I said, we don't even want to fall back into this pattern, at least not in terms of finding support, which means that in order for this to all work out, if it does come back down into here, we need this thing to wick right back up, right? Now, yesterday had a pretty seriously bullish move, right? We kind of put this little pattern together here. This was a bullish divergence there, and then essentially got the double bottom that would have been necessary to reverse it. Now, this is almost kind of forming the reverse of that. So I do have some thoughts in my mind that suggest that this thing is probably going to push right back down. But again, tough to say. They're still, it's tough to say what pattern's really truly the most logical one, because again, I could take this, I can move this over here, right? And this forms a decent rising channel with a possible double top here. However, this could also be forming a larger, so yesterday we talked about the inverse head and shoulder pattern right here. This one's textbook. This one, you can't get a much more perfect inverse head and shoulders than that. Went ahead, hit the measured move. We talked about it yesterday. I said, it's probably tough to believe that it's going to break back up into the ascending part of the pattern, which if I drew another trend line here, it basically did. And then I sure as heck didn't expect it to get as high as it did at all until the day started wearing on. And, then I was looking at 30,500 and 30,700, and hit both those numbers. Now, again, now we've got a situation where we've almost got either a double top, or we might even, in fact, have just a head and shoulders, right? Like this head doesn't make it far above the shoulders, but it is slightly. So could have a head and shoulder. So that could get us back down here for a retest. And I think that that's actually probably perfect. So in my mind, if I can get a retest down to here, this 29.4 level, and I see that get bought up immediately, then I think our chances of coming up here to the top of this rising channel, assuming that's what this ends up being, I think that stands a pretty solid chance, actually, which would get us closer to this, let's call it 31.5, maybe even, I mean, because you can see here, this was tough resistance through here. So, I mean, could get us up to about this level. When I flip over to the other chart, we'll kind of take a look at some other scenarios here too. But yeah, I think this actually, I think, works out perfect. We come back down here, we get a wick right here, and then potentially take on off. Again, the alternative would be that Bitcoin loses the support of the 21 here, on this hourly chart, just absolutely dumps through all these, and then just straight down to this probable level, 27 and change. So, I think we're right on the edge there again. And let's be honest, this market's always like that. But again, if we can hold this level, now this is the most ideal scenario, right? That we don't lose this level even. Maybe wick down just this far, 29.5-ish. And then all of a sudden we're in a pretty good position to actually rebound off of that. That's probably the most ideal scenario outside of 382. That would mean the market's super bullish. But I think this would be a retest of this breakout from the inverse head and shoulders. And there got to be buy orders just stacked all the way down. I know Matt and I talked about the idea that we're going to be looking to get some buy orders stacked down through this zone, depending on what this does here. So that's kind of what we're looking at there. And again, I just don't know at the moment if what's going to form this. We had a kind of a double bottom here. Obviously, we couldn't put in a higher high than over here. So the likelihood is, again, it's going to pull back. I just don't know how deep the retrace goes. I know the SPX today, and I think that's probably the next best place to take our attention to. So it was interesting because Bitcoin yesterday actually had a pretty decent day, right? It wasn't earth-shattering, life-altering, anything like that. But I mean, it was a better day than the S&P and the stock market had, right? Like yesterday was not a good day for any of the traditional markets. It gapped down to start today, but right into support. And then, at this point, I just, this doesn't look that strong, but that it never does at the bottom of a pattern, right? Like you always wonder if it's going to hold on. So I don't expect this to look strong, but it doesn't look great at all right there. And then you got the MACD curling down. Stochastic wants to curl up, and I've got it set up where I think that and this doesn't look as obvious here on the longer time frames, but if I zoom into like a 15-minute, you can see here where the S&P had that inverse head and shoulder it had put together, kind of a leaning inverse head and shoulder, broke above it just to get absolutely peppered by this trend line that's right here, just destroyed into this bottom. But now, again, other than the fact that, and I guess as I'm sitting here saying this, I was going to say it looked like it could be getting a nice bottoming, but at the same token, this could just end up being a small bear pennant. I've been talking about it for a while now. Matter of fact, it was kind of interesting. Back on March 11th, I was communicating with a YouTuber, we'll call him whatever, and I was telling him, I'm like, here did some stuff on the SPX, and basically said, all right, and I don't remember where we were at the time. We could go ahead and take a look. Let's see, March 11th. So at the time, let's see, just to get this going here. So at the time, the SPX was at about 4,300. started recognizing a series of lower lows. So really, I took a look at it and said, all right, how bad could this get? And I did some analysis on it, and basically I told this dude, 3,900 was the number I'm looking for. And again, this was 2 months ago, and then yesterday I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, how about that? 3,900 almost to the penny at the moment, and both Bitcoin and SPX, at least, and I know it may not feel this way, but they're both showing signs of at least a potential temporary reversal. Longer term, we're still heading down to the 200 simple, right? We've talked about this at this point ad nauseum, more or less. But that we're going to at some point hit the 200 simple on the weekly chart. What I was thinking about yesterday, when I think I talked about it in the video, is that the SPX is, the fall that the SPX had is a little different than Bitcoin, because here you worked through this range a little bit, right? There's some fill here. Now the SPX is going to try and fill this range here. And again, I think at this point it's totally feasible to believe that 3,600 or 3,300 could be in the cards. But again, we keep talking about it. I mean, it can only get so oversold on the weekly, and the worst that you can even see on this chart again would be March of 2020. We all know what happened then, and then the last time would be October of 2008. And I imagine the majority of us are old enough to remember the 2008 crash. I don't remember it. I don't remember feeling it this way, the way that I do this one, because I don't know, 2008. I don't think I had a whole lot of exposure to the market at the time. But yeah, I mean, we could probably all remember what happened as far as this crash goes. So it's definitely entertaining to think that we went straight from that crash into basically it's just been a slingshot ever since then. And to an extent, no surprise. I mean, quantitative easing. You had the bailout of the major car manufacturers. So then you got the Fed started dumping money into mortgage-backed securities, and they've got a couple $1 trillion worth of mortgage-backed securities on the books right now. Again, all these things that they've created this bubble, right? They 100% created it. If the market would have been allowed to do what, I'll put it this way: if the market was truly a free market, and the market was allowed to do what it should have done after, when the major auto manufacturers were getting, just clobbered, instead of giving them a bunch of money, bailing them out, etc. I mean, this thing would have corrected accordingly, and it probably would have fallen down to here. This was a double top. Take that measured move, and it probably would have flipped down to either here or here. But instead, we got the Federal Reserve and the monetary policy, and then stimulus, etc. All this stuff over the course of the last 12 years is coming to a head now, right? So it should be very interesting, when it all comes out in reality. But I guess the question becomes: so you had this, over here before we went on that parabolic run. It kind of had this massive double top. So maybe this thing does need to retrace down a little bit further, kind of come up, put in another hump. And then, of course, something will happen that the government will stimulate the market once again, so it doesn't have to fall, and we can avoid, the second worst recession of all time, or could be the worst one, versus, the Great Depression. But anyway, so moving along here, the SPX, though, as far as it goes, and the only reason we're talking about this in the first place is to help get a direction for Bitcoin. I did see that the SPX was in green territory earlier, so I think that at least that has some positivity. Yesterday it opened red, the futures were in the red, and then it never really did anything after that. Today is a chance that it might actually do something. So we'll hope for the best. It says that our implied open on the SPX is 1%. So just to kind of show you guys part of what I look to do in the mornings to kind of get prepped for this. Let's go ahead and get our measurement tool here. All right, so SPX closed there yesterday. It is a 1% implied open, which put okay. So I guess I'll put it this way. I would call it a positive thing, except that assuming this thing ends up being a bear flag, then essentially it's going to move to the top of that, hit that trend line, and then just come back down anyway. Again, I think there are one of a few ways that this thing could come out, and again, it all ends up helping Bitcoin in the end. If this is a little bull flag, it's going to come down right into this little rounded bottom that I have on here now, and hopefully that would be the thing that kind of helps break this $4,000-ish level and actually hold it. Again, and we talked about rounded bottoms enough. It either comes up here, goes parabolic out of it. It's either going to come up here, get rejected, and then put a handle, which is going to be a pretty tight range straight down this direction, right? Kind of, or more diagonal, excuse me, from here, but a very tight diagonal downspin. Or it'll kind of come to right about here and then continue the downward cycle. So. And that would make sense if it gets stopped out here. Well, then that would make sense that it's going to roll over and continue down. If it breaks beyond this line, then honestly that could be the recovery that we're waiting on at that point, or at least feasibly speaking. Again, it could come up here, get stopped out, but I don't know. I'll be keeping a close eye on this, and I do think that I mean, this, at least for the moment, this bear pennant could make some sense. But this also could be the start of some sort of mildly rising pattern here, right? Like this is slightly rising, and then you got this line here. So maybe you got something that looks like an asymmetric triangle. I don't know. But again, it's going to help us to kind of assess some Bitcoin direction. And for right now, this chart doesn't look great. So, and if I drew look at this little ascending pattern within the RSI here. We kind of got a similar thing there. What did it do after it ascended? It broke back down. So again, I'm not going to be surprised if this thing basically pops up into this range, maybe right here, rolls back over to down here, and maybe just keeps rolling. But again, we got to be near at least a bounce, because the SPX can only get so oversold on the weekly, and we're there. I mean, it's got to at least give us some sort of breathing room here very soon. And again, same thing like Bitcoin, just weeks and weeks and weeks of red. So yeah, it's got to give back something at some point, and let's look for it here to take place before too much longer. Let me get the SPX back out of here. Let's get back into Bitcoin and see just how bad things have gotten in the time we're talking. So yeah, I mean, nothing out of the ordinary here. We were just talking about this. We got possibly double top of sorts. This thing is coming back down through here. Honestly, I told Matt yesterday, I won't be surprised if this thing just wicks down here and then just gets snapped right back up. So maybe we'll get to actually watch that happen. But I don't know. We'll see here in a minute. But again, I mean, these are all the things we're just waiting on. I mean, this might be okay here. We'll see. But yeah, these are the things I'll be waiting on. And then, at some point here, whether Bitcoin ends up coming back down here first into this range or here, and then springing up. I don't know for sure, but I do think that once we start to put together some level of actual recovery, and again, it may not be the recovery that gets us back to retracement levels and up into the 50,000s. This may be just kind of a start, and then, obviously you can always get another pullback. But I mean, ideally, if Bitcoin can just work its way back into the range that we lost, that we never really tested, that would be, something to work with. So, kind of get back up into this 32 plus level, and come back up here and retest something up to this level. And again, it would make sense to an extent, for the simple fact that no different than the SPX. If we look at that chart again, we just simply never tested this range here. Let's see. Yeah, like we've still yet to come back up and retest this level, which again probably is just going to end up being a bearish retest of this 100 simple. But that's what we need to see. I mean, that's what Bitcoin needs to do. I mean, that's what should happen here. Is and that's why I think we still haven't made it all the way down here yet, because the market is prepping to bring us back up here to put in a bearish retest before potentially coming back down. Or maybe we put together something like this. Maybe we only get up to, say, 34, then back down here, then up here, then, roll over again. Could happen one of a couple of different ways. But, whew, man, I mean, that's what we need. We just give us a damn retest right here. Give us some breathing. Let's have some breath. Again, this range is totally untested except for over here. We need to put in some work to test it. And it all starts with getting back above and staying above this level, and then coming back up here the next week. So, for right now, though, again, it still would be practically impossible to say for sure which what exact pattern we have going here. I think it's safe to say that this line is getting exhausted, and unless this ends up being an ascending triangle, with this being a bearish fake out. If this is not an ascending triangle, then this thing's going to roll over. But again, it doesn't have to necessarily come down into here. It could just roll down and just kind of work its way through here. Man, outside of that, yeah, I mean, this I don't know. This looks like a double top here. I'm prepping for some decent downside, but again, hopefully 29.5-ish level holds up and we can just take on off out of here. It's Friday. I mean, this is what we're going to be looking at. This is the tedious work that has to be done in order to get the gains. So we will go ahead and continue to work on this and find us some winners. If things eventually do get back to the right side here, and I almost forgot, I did want to show us one more thing. Let me pull up a different chart. So you guys have seen me doing these reverse Fibonacci charts fairly frequently lately, really. And the reason for this is because every move has been a downward move, here all the way down, which to that point you can see this line, this particular trend line here, Bitcoin has stayed, aside from this bullish fake out, it's basically stayed under that line since April 21st. So full month downtrend right here alone. And it finally is trying to break that line again. And it looks very different than this did, right? Like this was just a big green spike and it was like, all right, here we are, just to dump right back. This one's actually trying to find support right here. It hasn't made that additional attempt to push up. And then we've got a possible double bottom. So I do think that even in the short term, I think that it would be realistic to believe that if we just hold this level, then we're going to shoot up here to this 33-ish range, assuming that the bull or the bears don't absolutely pepper the market here at about 31.8 or so. And again, I mean, this is where we're at. We want to see this turn into a green candle today for sure. We want to see something in that 30,000 range, 29.5 hold up. That would give us a good bear or a bullish retest. Right now, I can tell you that this trend line on the RSI is suggesting that we're stuck under that trend line right now. So again, we need this to flip green in order to continue the ascent. So we'll see. We'll see. This kind of gives me I look at this and I kind of see a little bit of a rounding to this, kind of at an angle. Again, same concept. If this thing doesn't break that line, the likelihood that this thing just dumps right to here becomes fairly strong, and at that point we're back down here testing these levels. But the main thing I wanted to convey was that when you're looking at certain moves and you kind of trying to assess some things, and I can make some additional adjustments here too. Let's say we wanted to use this level. The 1.618 is kind of like the golden. It'd be called the golden pocket if things are moving to the downside, but just think of it as the golden number, right? And it would suggest that based on a fall from this level to this level, assuming this holds up, and if we get a full 1.618 retracement back up from that spot, that goes to about 60,000 which would be, a fairly logical number for the market to end at. Or again, if we brought it down here and said, all right, we're only going to get a 1.618 from approximately there, we're looking at about 47. That brings us back up to here, which again would be fairly logical. Let's look at this and say, all right, this kind of swoop down, stopped out, had to move down further to get stopped out. One more after that potentially. So I mean, it's there are so many ways to look at this and try to figure, and that's why anybody, I got a buddy that asks me all the time, when moon, and nobody knows, nobody can tell. I mean, I could give you some ideas what I think about timing, but there's no such thing as truly knowing when it's going to happen. Just that it can or will happen. So yeah, a lot of hypothetical stuff here for you guys today. But all in all, again, we're just looking to see certain retracement levels get hit, become supports, or become resistance, and then we're looking for the move one direction or the other. Let's just hope again that these levels here hold up, and then we're ready to roll. If it can maintain this line, this thing turns into an ascending triangle. That actually becomes a beautiful, beautiful thing here. Measured move out of that would be ballpark. Let's use that one. Somewhere up here in the 33 range. So yeah, we've got some chance to get some positive things going here, and we'll just hope for the best, at least in the meantime. So hey, I appreciate you guys. Hope you enjoyed the content, and we'll catch up with you soon.